The NBA offseason is over and the season is here. And that means that the 70 or so players who entered their name into the draft and signed a contract with an NBA team have made their debut in the NBA. These players are loaded with potential, uncertainty, and excitement. These are the most undefined, undeveloped, and uncertain players in the NBA. The draft itself is the most exciting, consistent moment of the NBA offseason. All the potential and possibilities, and will this guy be a bust? Will this guy be this team, that team, who, what, when, where, why, how? And most of the time, the teams picking the players end up being right about what they want and what they'll get. And sure, maybe they don't always get exactly what they expect, e.g. Cat's defense, false shooting, Lonzo's percentages, but these are easily forgivable once you see what they do on other aspects of the game. But there's always that one case, sometimes multiple cases, in which a player definitely doesn't turn out anything like the original team planned, and not for the better either. When a player with extremely high potential is drafted extremely high, typically in the lottery or top 7, and they don't live up to that potential, then they are widely considered a draft bust. Players like Kwame Brown, Anthony Bennett, and Derek Williams are all recognizable draft bust names. Some might even have an argument that players like Wayman Tisdale, Deion Waiters, or Michael Kidd-Gilchrist or Andrew Wiggins can be considered draft busts. They were solid, but never really peaked or were picked ahead of players that were clearly better than them, like Joe Dumars, Karl Malone, Chris Mullin, Joel Embiid, Damian Lillard, or Andre Drummond. But what about the one that no one talks about? No, I'm not talking about Evan Turner or Jan Vesely, I think it's Vesely. We're not talking about those guys. Anyways, hello my gamers, this is Alex, the Guy Gamer, and today I'll be talking to you about Joe Smith, the number 1 pick of the 1995 NBA draft, who ended up being nothing more than a role player and a journeyman, and ruined an NBA franchise's future in the process. The 1995 NBA draft was packed with star talent. Kevin Garnett, Michael Finley, Rasheed Wallace, Jerry Stackhouse, and Damon Stoudemire were all amazing players when they were in their prime. Kevin Garnett has a legitimate argument to be the greatest power forward of all time. But ahead of all these players, the Golden State Warriors decided to select Joe Smith, a 6'10" forward center from the University of Maryland. In the 2 years he spent at the U, he averaged 20 points, 10 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 3 blocks, all while shooting 57% from the field, 42% from 3, and 73% from the free throw line. He was seen as a good shooter, relentless rebounder, and natural hard worker, despite being very underweight, as well as a good perimeter defender. And when he began his career, that's about what he was. Over his first 2 seasons with the Warriors, he averaged 17 points and 8 rebounds over near full seasons, until he was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers along with Brian Shaw for Clarence Weatherspoon and Jim Jackson. After that trade, it was all a downward spiral from there, as he never averaged more than 14 points per game again. After being traded to Philadelphia, the 76ers organization decided to opt out of the last year of his contract for the 1999 lockout-shortened season. He then signed a 1-year, $1.75 million contract with the Minnesota Timberwolves, where he was to play alongside fellow 1995 draftee Kevin Garnett. But while he did have a solid season that year, averaging 13.7 points and 8 rebounds and 42% field goal shooting and 75% free throw shooting, the season was somewhat lackluster. But here's where things get interesting. The NBA rules state that if a player spends 3 seasons consecutively with an NBA franchise, then that franchise gains the player's bird rights, allowing the team to re-sign that player at the end of his contract, even if it brings him over the salary cap. This allowed them to sign other players, make moves to build around their young star player, Kevin Garnett. The Wolves had a secret under-the-table agreement with Smith that if he signed 3 one-year minimum deals, he would be rewarded with a massive contract that could be worth up to $86 million. Unfortunately for both parties, David Stern saw what the Wolves front office was doing and pulled the plug on the operation, punishing the Wolves by disallowing them to re-sign Smith again, and also removing 5 first-round draft picks. Imagine what they could have done with those picks and Kevin Garnett. Smith decided to sign with the Detroit Pistons for 1 year, and then after that, he signed with the Wolves again. This time, he signed for 3 years, and then was traded to the Bucks. Anyway, the point is, they bounced around the league a lot. 13 different teams. And he didn't really do much over the rest of his career, except maybe average sixth-man type numbers for an average team, maybe have the occasional big game once in a while. He never made an all-star team, and was really average. A far cry from what he was expected to be when he came into the NBA. So, what went wrong? Joe Smith came into the NBA with immense expectations and potential. Someone who could average 25 and 10 over the course of his career, as well as lead his team to wins, playoff records, and even maybe, just maybe, a championship or two. What he ended up being was a role player who bounced around the league from team to team a record 13 times between 1995 and 2011. So how did he end up like this? What brought him from someone who was expected to be a superstar in the NBA to a journeyman who never broke 20 points per game? Well, in the early scouting reports, he was noted as extremely underweight. It even said that to succeed in the NBA at the forward center position, he would need to put on an extra 20 to 30 pounds. This, combined with the fact that he would consistently get out of position for blocks, made him a pretty bad rim protector and virtually unplayable at center. He was also routinely unable to pass out to the open man consistently, averaging only 1 assist per game over his entire NBA career. He was also known to force offense, trying to create something out of nothing, which he regularly failed at, because he just wasn't good enough. His career kind of took the Nerlens Noel path. A high draft pick, 6th and 1st, who played on a bad team for their first 2 seasons, 76ers and Warriors, bounced around the league for a bit, had a chance to prove themselves, got involved in some drama, and missed out on a big contract. If you think about it, Nerlens looks to be going on that path now. Joe Smith played on 13 teams, and Nerlens will have played on 3 teams in 5 seasons. Nerlens got in trouble with the coaching staff of the Mavericks, and Joe Smith got in trouble with the whole NBA. Nerlens missed out on a sizable $80 million contract, and Joe Smith ended up losing out on a bird rights contract worth up to $83 million. Both are, and were, respectively, solid players in the NBA, but far cries from what they were expected to be, and therefore can be considered busts. Now granted, Joe Smith did manage to make the most out of his career, playing 16 seasons, even if right now his financial situation hasn't been very great, but in the end, he just wasn't deserving of that number 1 overall pick in 1995. I actually kind of feel bad for the guy, because he was picked number 1 overall in the NBA draft, became a journeyman, and then lost all his money to bad investments. Thankfully, Alex Rodriguez, a former NBA player, helped him out of that situation. But still, who knows? Was he even really a bust? Sure seems that way, given who was picked after him and what literally he did over the course of his career. Maybe things would have been different if he hadn't decided to do those things with the Wolves. Maybe he could have had a bit more successful career if he just worked on some of the parts of his game that had weaknesses. Well, no one can know for sure. What I do know for certain is that this video has finally come to an end. Thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, leave a like, comment, and then subscribe. I hope to do many more videos like this, where I just talk about the NBA and do predictions and that kind of stuff that Mike Prezemba or B-Sauls or Dom does. This is Alex the Guy Gamer, saying goodbye, my gamers.